The only thing that's kind of unique about SaaS is that we get these annual prepaid subscriptions. So we get the entire money up front for an entire year. And we get to live off that, but we also have the obligation of delivering the product for the next 12 months, and we need to make sure the lights stay on for that particular aspect. After that, SaaS has its own unique, we call them key performance indicators or KPIs or benchmarks, however you want to call it. There are different ways to do the accounting that have to be done properly. There are different ways to set up the financial reports, et cetera, et cetera. But fundamentally,
welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Anthony. Anthony, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Michelle.
Awesome. So give everybody the highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Well, I was born on a dark, cloudy winter day. No, I'm just kidding. I am founder and CEO of SaaS Gurus. We're a fractional CFO and back office vendor for SaaS startups. Software as a subscription, if you're not familiar with the term. We deal entirely with startups. We don't really do anything past the point where they're large enough to hire a full-time CFO. Been doing this for about 20 years, 2 unicorn exits to boot, and really love what I'm doing.
Awesome. So how did you get into CFO for SaaS? That's a CFO very niche.
Yeah, niche makes you reach, I was told
exactly.
at one point. And we've been very successful and business is booming. How did I get into it? Well, I've been doing fractional, call it controller and CFO work for, good portion of my life. I got tired of working for other people, and my father was an entrepreneur, and I'm like, following dad's footsteps. So I became an entrepreneur on my own back around 2006. And we came across our first SaaS client in 2007, before anybody here in this part of the world, which is Ann Arbor, Michigan, go blue, had ever heard of what that is. I know we got pasted this last weekend. That sucks. Anyway, I thought it was a really interesting business model, right? Instead of like downloading software and paying for it one time and then you get to use it, you actually have this, annuitized revenue stream, as my partner called it. He says, this is a great way of making money. Well, yeah, it is. Obviously the success of SaaS and subscription modeling for just about everything at this point, everybody's on a subscription of some kind, it seems. I'm waiting for my groceries to be on a subscription. I think I might be able to save some money, given 2 teenage boys and how much they eat.
Careful, you'll be having a cow delivered to your house in your 80s.
Basically, there's a revolving door in the backyard for the livestock. Anyway, we just started working with them, right? And then around 2015, a SaaS company here in Ann Arbor reached out to me and said, would you like to come on board full time to help us really scale this company? And that was my first unicorn exit. We helped grow them from 10x their revenue in 3 years, which was an amazing growth curve. And I immediately jumped to another company in Ann Arbor that also ended up being a unicorn exit shortly thereafter. So I got 2 of them back to back, both of them in Ann Arbor, which was really unusual. And after that, that's when I really said, you know what, I'm going to specialize in SaaS. That's all I want to deal with. It's a fascinating market. And I have never looked back. It's been an amazing ride and continues to be an amazing ride.
Nice. So talk to me about the differences from a SaaS platform to others, at like either from your perspective or from the CEO's perspective of how do they need to look at their business differently than, other businesses might.
I think the only really major difference is the prepayment of the subscription. Otherwise, it's the same. You've got to manage your cash flow. You need to know where your cash flow is going in order to manage the business. As a very wise professor of mine once said, you can't spend net income. You can only spend cash. Don't forget that. And so I embrace that very much. My CFO role, I call the cash flow oracle, not the chief financial officer, because 80 to 90% of my time is spent with my clients forecasting cash, especially if you're venture backed. Because then you need to know what's called the runway. When is your cash going to run out? So you have to go out and raise more money. You don't want to be doing that at the last minute. But whether you're a bootstrap company or you're a venture backed company, cash flow management is the key to your success. If you cannot manage your cash, you don't know where it's going, you don't know where it's coming from, and being able to manage that flow and balance it correctly, you run out of business. So I don't think that that substantially changes what your business, no matter your business model. The only thing that's kind of unique about SaaS is that we get these annual prepaid subscriptions. So we get the entire money up front for an entire year. And we get to live off that, but we also have the obligation of delivering the product for the next 12 months, and we need to make sure the lights stay on for that particular aspect. After that, SaaS has its own unique, we call them key performance indicators or KPIs or benchmarks, however you want to call it. There are different ways to do the accounting that have to be done properly. There are different ways to set up the financial reports, et cetera, et cetera. But fundamentally, it
Mhm.
comes down to sales growth and cash management.
Absolutely. Well, and it's been an interesting journey for me in the whole business strategy side of things is that is kind of the nirvana of business is figuring out how to get any business into a model whereby people are paying for packages either on a monthly basis, an annual basis, whatever it is. The longer you can keep your clients entertained and they can stay enamored with you, the better that relationship is.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed that there's any I don't know, insight after working with a few of them that there's aspects to business that they're kind of either doing wrong or it's like, hey, there's a better way to do it. You might want to come and try this. Or is it pretty much kind of straightforward? We have software, we kick it out, we do it.
Well, it's funny you should ask that. I think, I would rephrase the question is what's the biggest challenge that these clients of ours tend to have?
Right?
And it's almost always on the go-to-market side. Um, did you ever see the movie Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come. That's not how software works. Okay. That's not how products work. That's not how any business works, right? Mine included. It's like if I build it, people will just come to me. No, there are a billion other or a million other companies out there all trying to get people's attention. And the idea that, hey, I got this great new AI software that does X, Y, and Z. Everybody's going to want to buy it. Mm, That's not a go to market strategy. That is a movie, and it's called The Field of Dreams. And Kevin Costner was in it. And we all know how it ended, right? And it's complete fantasy. That is not a successful business model. And so I would say for our clients that are bootstrappers, the ones that have, gotten themselves where they are without any outside investment, they've already figured that go to market strategy out, or they wouldn't be bootstrapped up to $1 million or $2 million of recurring revenue a year, which is when usually they find us and need our help. The VC backed companies, the venture backed companies, those are the ones where they tend to have created a product. It looks really cool. It looks like there is a target, a total addressable market that's really big, that there's a segment that could use this, but they're still trying to figure out how exactly to sell to it, how much to sell it for, who within the ideal client profile is the target that they need to go. So I would say the big challenges there are almost always the same for any company, which is who's your ideal customer? Why do they buy your product? What's their pain point or their pleasure point? What is the message that you're going to get to them that's going to resonate with them so that they respond to you? And have you gotten that message to them in a channel where they actually, hang out? I call it the watering hole, right? Did you actually put the water in the watering hole so that they actually drink it? And then they say, oh, this is a really cool piece of software. I need to get it.
Nice. So when it comes to that kind of strategy, I've noticed that there's with I don't say all entrepreneurs, unless they've gone through a couple of businesses and they're like, oh yeah, I know where we're at in this. Would you kind of phase out businesses? Like, would you say that there's certain phases of a business, and when you're in the first phase, these are the things that you need to recognize, but you don't recognize, and it's kind of like there's a horizon step, and once you get over this horizon, it's like, oh, okay, I see what I was missing out on, but I didn't see it before. It's kind of like hiring people when you don't have the money to hire people.
Yeah, don't do
Going,
that.
no, you really need to hire people, even though you don't have the money to hire. Now, what are those kind of phases in your mind or that they can recognize or help them out?
I think the first, I call it phase transition, is going from a word of mouth business model to an actual outbound driven sales approach. So I'm talking B2B now. Business to consumer is a little bit different. You can put a free product out there. It's called product driven growth. Give it for free. Word of mouth grows it. And then you get to a certain point where you start to charge for it, right? I'm talking about business to business software. That's primarily what we excel in as SaaS gurus is business to business. It's not business to consumer. And in the business to business space, usually what happens is the product starts off and it's based on personal relationship of the CEO, founder led sales. So they know the market, or they know people in their Rolodex, or they've got a list of, contacts from a past life that they know they could sell the software to, or they have a reasonable chance of selling the software to. And so they
Mm.
get these kind of initial wins.
Usually
And
there's
then,
a reason why they made it in the first place.
right, right. So
So they
they
have them.
they they can't,
Yeah.
usually some sort of, I want to say gearhead, because gears are so 19th and 20th century now. guess you call them bit heads now. I don't know. Anyway, some software guy or gal or whoever came up with and said, hey, this is a cool piece of software. Hey, I think if I developed a piece of software that mines patient records and finds the ideal participants for clinical studies, that I could sell that, right? Happens to be a client of ours. That's exactly what their software does. And that's exactly what happened. The guy was, he was a salesperson, and he understood that that market needed this, and he got a buddy of his, and they said, hey, what if we develop an AI piece of software that does this? Lo and behold, they did it. They found a client. They thought it was great. They were able to attract some capital, venture capital, and the venture capitalist is, okay, show us how you can actually go to market with this. Right. So that's really that phase transition where you go from word of mouth, personal connections. I started my business out the same way, as a consultant, right? As a provider of fractional CFO services. I'd had 2 unicorn exits. People knew my name. My business partner said, hey, I got a client that's a SaaS client where they could really use your help. They introduced me to 2 others, word of mouth, right? But then there becomes a point where word of mouth is not going to really get you very far, unless somehow you've managed to create something that's like a wildfire type of product. It's usually, there's going to be a limit where those referrals, they come in a little, 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 3 at a time, but you're not going to get any accelerating growth with that. So during that phase, when you're in the word, I call it the word of mouth phase, you really need to be figuring out how you get to the next step where you actually hire business development representatives or some sort of firm, or bring them in house to actually go out and start knocking figuratively on people's doors to sell your product. That's that go to market strategy. You have to have a really clear ICP, ideal client persona, right? Ideal client profile, whatever you want to call it. You have to really know who your segment is. You need to know the people within that segment and how they buy and why they buy. And that comes down to their pain points. I mean, if you're selling a piece of software it's a nice to have, you're probably not going to get much traction. If you're selling a piece of software that they have to have because they have a pain that's costing them a lot of money or aggravation or whatnot, that's going to be an easier sell. But you need to understand that about your product market fit. So understanding your product market fit, understanding your ICP, understanding that we call them the avatars, the personas within the ICP, what they respond to, what their pain points are, and then structuring your entire strategy, your go-to-market strategy around that and your brand at the same time, right? It's not something that, hey, I'm, XYZ Corporation. Gee, what does XYZ do? I'm SaaS Gurus. It makes it very apparent what it is that we do. We deal with SaaS companies and we claim that we're gurus at it, right? So it becomes a branding issue as well. So it all kind of fits together. But that marketing piece, that ability to generate inbound leads, that transition to a successful strategy where that works, that's the phase. That's the changeover.
Nice. Well, I like your comments about the watering hole because I think so many people make the mistake of not asking their current clients, if you were new to this, so they're all happy, they're a new client, they're signed up, they're raving about it, and not asking them, hey, if you had never seen this before, where would you be hanging out that you would be open to this idea?
Mhm.
And nobody ever asks them that, but it's almost paramount in the next phase because some of them, back in the day, it used to be, oh, I was reading magazine on the airport while I was flying. It's like, well, there are no magazines in the airport now. So where do you,
What's a
what are you
magazine?
watching? What are you doing? What do you do on an airplane now? Um,
You watch
and
the videos on the back seat in front of you, right?
exactly,
So you're laughing. This is all we do now is we go in there, we plug on, and we watch our favorite John
exactly.
Wick movie, right? Or whatever it happens
So
to
if
be.
you can sneak that into John Wick, the plot
Yeah, in
somehow.
between how many people he's killing per minute or whatever it is.
Exactly. And the software that he was using while he was doing his business.
Mm.
Yeah, I think marketing is going to get super weird coming up here. But so when it comes to kind of the startups, and they're looking for you, one, what makes them attractive to you? So what makes them position themselves well to go, oh, Anthony wants to work with these guys. This would be an ideal one, client, or two, business partner.
So our ICP is very clearly defined as SaaS, anywhere from pre-revenue up to the B round of investment. After B round, they're going to hire a full-time CFO. We prefer to work with CEOs that have and understand what a fractional CFO and their team can do, right? It's not something where, of course, I'm going to say, in my opinion, this is something you have to have. And it is, right? You need to have somebody who understands the lay of the land when it comes to finances and also how to present your company in the best light to investors or acquirers. That's what an experienced CFO does. We should be bringing value to your company, not just a bottom line expense on the G&A. So a strategic partner that can sit next to you and say, hey, your pitch deck needs to be redesigned so that it includes this information on it. That's what's going to appeal to investors. Or your pricing strategy is a little off. We need to tweak that so that you have true recurring revenue and not a whole bunch of services revenue, because the valuation on recurring revenue is 7 to 10x, whereas on services it's 1 to 2. Those kinds of conversations, right, are, part and parcel of what we do when we engage with a client. And a client that understands the value of that and appreciates it, of course, is our ideal client. A client that doesn't, they don't generally stay with us, because they think they look upon, and we screen them out early, believe me, because they don't look upon it as a necessity. They think of it as a necessary evil, and that's not what we do. We are there to basically help the company scale. There to help it become more valuable. Ultimately, that's what the CFO's role is for. So I like clients that have been through it before. As you pointed out, the CEO has been there, done that, and understands the value of having a CFO partner. Usually the first timers, something goes wrong. That's when they come to us. It's like, gee, I'm bleeding cash and I don't know why. Or my clients are leaving out the back door as quickly as I'm getting them. And, my cash flow is suffering, whatever it happens to be. Or I don't know what my gross margin is, so I don't know if I'm in a good position or not. There's a lot of information out there, but the problem is that you have to sort through all of it and figure out what makes sense and what works for you. And AI isn't there yet. And
Oh, absolutely.
there's some of the stuff in accounting and finance that can be replaced by AI. And as a matter of fact, we're doing it internally. We're using those tools ourselves. But there's nothing for the 25 years of experience and scar tissue on my backside of mistakes and watching clients make mistakes or be successful, that at this point I have been able to see an AI be able to replicate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to me, there's a huge difference in the perception, well, as you pointed out, to somebody who is an accountant, somebody that will run the numbers. They know how to run the numbers. They can look at a spreadsheet and go, here's X, Y, and Z. Awesome. But then there's a whole other element to tax planning, to business planning, to all the whole gamut of that. So is there I mean, you mentioned a few questions. Is there a way of understanding the spectrum to which you will work with somebody and kind of and not only look at that, because a lot of times there's people who they're being stolen from and they don't know it. And there's these people they trust, they've been around for 20 years. It's only the five of us. How could we do that? But then all of a sudden the numbers are leaking. They're going, I don't know where it goes.
Mhm.
What is the breadth and width? Or can you even describe that?
Oh, absolutely. So what you allude to is what I call the driving your car through the windshield or the rear view mirror. Accounting, by its nature, is backward looking. It's looking at what has happened and accounting for it, putting it in the right buckets, putting it in financial statements. You use the word plan. That's a future activity, right? The people who look to the future. Finance, by its nature, looks to the future. Accounting, by its nature, looks to the past. You need to be able to understand that there's a big difference between those two. A controller or an accountant, a bookkeeper, a tax CPA, they're not going to be very strong in future casting, in looking forward and saying, hey, you know what? I see that your operating expenses have been this amount over the past few years, but what are we doing to engage the marketing team in the future? Or what's your roadmap for your product, for your engineering team, and who are you going to need to staff that? And do those new features translate into new revenue for your sales team for them to sell. And putting all that together in a future looking forecast, that is what a finance person primarily is responsible for, is we are there to help you predict the future. Starts with predicting cash flow, right? I go back to that same thing. Being able to predict cash flow means I have to be able to predict customer receipts, which means customer invoices, which means sales activity, and all the things that happen below the line, the operating expenses, the gross margin, the cost of goods sold, the HR, all of that stuff, and put that into what we call a financial model that actually spits out what it is that we need, which is the ending cash balance by month. And then being able to go back through and analyzing it, what has happened. Oh, we thought we were going to spend X, Y, and Z on payroll, but we ended up spending a whole bunch more. What happened? Probably not fraud, although it could be. I've not really had any of my clients experience fraud at this point. I'm trying to think if we've had any of them anywhere in the past where I've come in and said, "Yeah, you've had somebody stealing from you." Usually, business owners are pretty good about keeping their eye on cash. They usually end up getting overwhelmed trying to keep their eye on cash, and they need some help. But most of the time, I guess maybe we've been lucky. We've not really had anybody who's had any significant fraud. Maybe once in a while they pay a fake vendor bill, right? I don't know if you've encountered that. Vendor fraud is pretty rampant these days, where it's like, here's my W-9 and your invoice, and there's an email chain from the CEO saying, yeah, go ahead and pay. It's all complete BS. It's been totally made up. My team is really good at finding that kind of stuff and keeping it from getting inside because we're trained. That's what we do. Is we protect the company's assets. And you can also take the ETS off of that. We also are there to protect the company's, you know what, from being sued or from being, experiencing certain losses. So in the end, it's accounting is past looking. And if you're relying on an accountant as your CFO, you're going to be in trouble because they're probably not skilled in forward looking and making that transition. Accountants, I've noticed this over the past. I don't come from an accounting background. I come from a very different background. And so it's easy for me to step back and say, you're approaching this as an accountant, not as a finance person. And there is a very big difference between the two.
Absolutely, there is. So I think while you're looking for unicorns, business owners that run SaaS companies that are looking for a magician, this is kind of where you want to look because there's so many times I see where business owners get stuck in their own. There you go. It's got the magician hat, wizard's hat, and everything.
There's my
Awesome.
Gandalf hat.
They when we start a business and can't see what we can't see. I remember starting my first business and they wanted me to talk about projections. And I finally went like, do you just want me to make numbers up? Like, how am I getting this? Like, I can
No.
make numbers up, but I'm not there's got to be a path somehow. And they had to kind of backtrack projections
Yeah.
for me. And it seemed what they were looking for, well, what you bring to the table to me is very magical because there's so many solutions that happen so easily on things that as a business owner we struggle on and we're going like, I just can't see what I can't see. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
I'm super excited to hear about one of your Cinderella stories.
Well, let me put on the right hat.
Many, many hats.
I'm a man of many hats, but I'm wearing the CFO hat. So this was an ideal situation where a client had developed an AI solution. I can't really go into too many details because then you'd be able to figure out who they are. But they'd created an internal use software that they were using themselves to help their clients. And then all of a sudden they realized that somebody was willing to pay for this. Oh, pretty cool. And they started selling it. And the company originally had started outside of the United States, had actually sourced its development overseas as well, and had developed, had basically had a marketing and sales company in another country, so two countries. And then they said, okay, we want to move into the United States and really sell it in the US because the US is a huge market. They're all English speakers. There was no translation issues involved. And, it was an AI that was really heavily driven with language, of course, because it's a lot of these are large language model pieces of software. And so long and short of it was they found me through word of mouth, somebody who knew our work, and said, hey, you need to, if you're going to move into the United States and start scaling this, you have intellectual property issues, you got software development, you got all sorts of cross-border stuff. You need to have somebody by your side who understands the intricacies of these things and can help you set up for scale. And so around May of 2023, I want to say, they basically reached out to me and we started having some conversations. And I immediately got the impression that this is a really cool piece of software that can really take off really fast. And this is an industry insider who is bootstrapping this. They weren't looking for outside money. They were looking for somebody that they could pay to help be their CFO and help guide their internal accounting team, which was very small, in doing this. Their financial statements were a disaster because some tax CPA had put them together. Sorry, I love tax CPAs. Don't take it wrong, but you're the last people I would want putting together my financial reports for investors. Okay. Tax CPAs are fabulous at finding ways to save taxes. That's where they belong. Okay. Not putting together financial statements for investors. That doesn't work. Okay, SaaS has a very specific way that they want their financial statements put up, and you should have them done that way. And if you need to know why, reach out to me. I'll show you. It's not like it's rocket science, but it needs to be done the right way. So they were cash flow positive. They had a cool product. The problem is that it was paid for by, we'll say a Canadian company, and the development was done in the Ukraine. And, none of the employment agreements assigned the IP, the intellectual property, to the company. So there was all sorts of like holes in the PR area, in the people area. So basically, there was kind of a jacked up mess. Financial statements didn't tell us what they needed. They had no cash forecasting. They were just doing it by the seat of their pants. They didn't have any of the SaaS metrics that they needed in order to be able to go out and get investors. They didn't know what their retention numbers were as far as their clients were concerned. They were flying. Think of it this way. They're driving down a straight highway in the middle of a desert, pitch black night with no dashboard, right? And no headlights. As long as the road continues to be straight, you're good. You can hit the accelerator and just keep on going. But, as soon as you start running out of gas or the engine starts overheating, or maybe the road takes a little bit of a curve, you're going to be in trouble. So a lot of what we do is illumination. The first thing we do is illumination, which is, here's what has happened in your company, in your financial statements. That's a huge step forward, is getting the financial statements cleaned up and showing them, this is what your gross margin has been. This is what your marketing and sales spend has been. Here's what your R&D expense has been. Here's what your G&A expense has been, because those are the main buckets and categories that we need to be classifying when we look at that. Phase 2 then is to say, how do we start forecasting? How do your clients find you? How much do they pay? When do they pay you? Do they pay you on time, or do they pay you late? Do they pay you by credit card or by check? All of those little intricacies, you call it magic. Maybe it's rocket science and I just take it for granted right now, but those are all the pieces that we put together to say, okay, here's where your cash is going. You don't have enough cash to hire a new sales team. You're going to need to go out and get money. That's an illumination moment. Do we have enough cash, working capital, to actually expand our team on our own, or do we have to go out and find money? Do we find investment money, or do we borrow it? And if we borrow it, at what rate are we going to end up borrowing it? And will a bank actually loan us money, or do we have to go to revenue lines of credit, which is expensive? In the end, we were able to come in there. We were able to figure out the whole intellectual property thing and get that straightened out. We were able to figure out their cash forecasts and their financials. And we found out that they had a terrible retention problem, that they were losing clients almost as fast as they were getting them. And nobody was going to invest in them as long as their retention numbers were that bad. So at that point, we're like, you can't really go out and raise money because nobody's going to touch you with a 10-foot battle axe because your retention numbers are abysmal. You have to fix that. So then we starts having conversations with the sales team. How do we pre-qualify our clients ahead of time so that we bring in the right customers so they don't turn around and leave as soon as they get here? So immediately we start having operational impacts. Immediately we start having strategic impacts. And from a standing start of essentially zero revenue, they are now crossing the $12 million threshold, and we are 2 years into it.
Yay! That is awesome. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it was a great
Nice.
start.
I love stories like that. And I know our listeners are going to want their own story like that. So, how did they start their journey with you?
It's very easy. I have one of the rarest last names on the planet.
Nice.
If you Google Nitsos, Nitsos, you will find less than 400 people with that last name in the entire world. So
Wow.
I'm not John Smith. It's really easy to
Mm,
find Anthony Nitsos, Nitsos, SaaS Gurus, SaaSGurus, just like it sounds.
perfect.
Google those two. You're going to find our website. You're going to find my LinkedIn page. You're going to find whatever it is my social media people have set up there. They're the magicians that handle all that.
Nice.
Or just Anthony at SaaS-Gurus.com. That's easy. Email me. I will answer you.
Oh,
There's no
perfect.
question about it. If I take personal pride in, greeting every new client or every prospect that comes in the door, because it's going to be very easy to find out right up front how we can help them.
Nice.
Or
So,
not. I mean,
yep.
once in a while they come in, it's like, we really don't need you.
Either way, we still appreciate having you call. So, peeps, you know me. Just scroll down, click on the links, open up in a new browser because we're not done yet. So, Anthony, I get to ask you, at what point in life did you know you were a special kind of crazy to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
Hmm. That's a good one. Probably around 2005.
What happened?
I was bored out of my mind. I was a controller for a Japanese company. I had taken them from $5 to $50 million in revenue inside of 3 years. I designed all the back office systems, had completely scaled everything, and I had zero work because everything was so automated. All my financial reports came to me. Everything was like, okay, I would actually let things break so I'd have something to do. Okay. It was that kind of a
That's not good.
situation. No, I wasn't. And it was like, okay, I'm bored out of my gourd. I don't know what to do. It's like, I've kind of maxed out this accounting thing.
Hmm.
What's next? Finance. So by strange circumstance which would require beer and a lot of a lot of bar talk at this point to say the story, I met somebody and I ended up going to St. Andrews, Scotland, the University of St. Andrews, where they invented golf. No, I do not play golf. Got my degree in finance because I realized that finance is where the game is really played, not in accounting. And came back and hooked up with a partner who was doing this stuff, accounting stuff on his own, and he needed a finance and accounting expert to help him out. And that was the beginning.
That's
Um,
awesome.
there were lots of times when I hated it. There was one point where I lost 80% of my revenue in 1 year, and I was down to subsistence with a 2-year-old kid.
Uh-huh.
There's been a lot of, sleepless nights. This was not an easy journey. I sound crazy now and I'm having lots of fun, but this is after a lot of hard work. This is not for everybody. I stuck with it because I felt like, this is what I want to do. I really don't want to be working for people. I like working for myself and I like doing it on my own. But if you're going to get out and start working and doing your own, being a founder and start your own company, it's going to be hell. Okay. Just understand that and accept it, and accept that that's going to be part of the journey. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with a heart attack or a stroke or ulcers or whatever other health problems that you have as a result of all the adrenaline that's going to be surging through your body 24/7. So enjoy it if that's really what your calling is. When I discovered I was crazy, well, that was years ago.
We are a special kind of crazy. It's like, hey, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Come on, you can do it too. It'll be fun. It'll be fun, they said. You've been absolutely awesome, Anthony. Any last words for our peeps?
Take care of your team. Whoever is out there as a CEO or a founder, it's all about your people, right? My original training, believe it or not, was in human medicine. I actually got accepted into medical school and I decided to quit about a year into it when I was like, this is not for me. But that training never really left me. And the ability to heal companies financially is what I do now, rather than healing bodies, as a doctor. But it all comes down to the people on your team. Give them good benefits. Don't be cheap. Give them the stuff that they need to take the stress out of their lives so that they can focus on making you successful. Don't ride them. Don't micromanage them. Treat them like you want to be treated. That's the words that I would send to anybody out there, whether you're doing your finances right or not. Make sure that your people are taken care of.
I love it. You have been absolutely amazing. I appreciate your time and I know how valuable it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Peeps, thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.